And we are off. Here we go. So welcome, Jason. It's good to have you. It's good to see you through the screen. It's been a while.
Yes, sir. It's been a little bit, but it's good catching up. Look forward to today's chat.
Yeah, we were talking right before we got started. So it was kind of a funny miscommunication to get on this, which I appreciate. It wind up being a last minute thing for you to do. So I really do appreciate you pulling it together. But listen, I have like a set amount of questions I always kind of have written going, but like I did it with a good friend of mine and a guy I really like and respect and who I've worked with, and I haven't been working with him in a while. I was like, I have a bunch of questions, but I also just want to go off on whatever you want to talk about. Like I want to make sure people watching get an idea of like what you do as a coach and so forth. But I also just want you to have fun with it, because part of this is also catching up with a lot of people that I haven't talked to, worked with, or seen in a while. Mm-hmm. So I kind of just start obviously at the beginning with the past. So I would throw it to you like, I always talk to a lot of people about the Check Institute. Like I'm a big fan of I have the two pillars of like Paul Check and Charles Poliquin, and I'm always kind of beating the dead horse on that, or the drum, I should say. But you're very familiar with that. You are at that education level as my last guest in that system with Check, and then you have some other specialty areas you go into. So can you give me a quick synopsis? What's your background, and what are the certifications are? What are they called, and what are the sort of certifications or educations do?
Got it. Yeah. Thanks, John. So one step back from that. So my formal education is in psychology. I got advanced degrees in administration and another one in organizational development. So working and consulting with, in particular, hospitals. And I did that for a long time, but really learning really well about systems theory and systems thinking and understanding how organizations are designed as systems. I ran into my own health challenges. And then next thing you know, I was looking for solutions, and I understood this concept around systems thinking. And that's when I found Paul, because Paul was the only person from a holistic health lens, from my opinionated opinion, that was really talking that the body is a system of systems. And we can't just say knee pain independent of the rest of the body. We have to think about gut. We have to think about core stability, and then, the inflammation of the gut and how the gut might be linked to it, and then what you're eating, what you're hydrating, how's your sleep. So all of it became something I easily gravitated towards. So I jumped into the holistic lifestyle coaching efforts with the Check Institute. And then that led through holistic lifestyle coach level 1, level 2, level 3. In parallel, I was also taking the corrective exercise coach and the practitioner level 1 certifications within the Check Institute, participated in other types of trainings within the Institute that was offered at the time. That spiraled into doing a lot of shadow work. So I synced up with others from the Check Institute that were friends of mine.
I want to interrupt you. Give me a quick synopsis of shadow work.
Yeah, so shadow work is, for me, exploring your unconscious, unresolved issues, as well as your talents and the things that you are unaware of. And it's symptomatic in language that we use, like, how do I have these limiting beliefs? I seem to want to lose weight, but for some reason I keep on sabotaging or undermining myself, and I don't understand cognitively 1 + 1 is 2, but emotionally 1 + 1 might equal 10. And I don't understand how to address the underlying somatic or unconscious issues that might be driving forces in my life. And so I was really fascinated about that. I had a background in psychology, did a lot of trainings in things like crucial conversations and understanding influence and understanding the game and the chess match of psychology. So
you actually have a degree in psychology. It's not a background, right? Degree in psychology.
I have a degree in psychology. From Marietta College.
Okay. All right. Yeah. And any specialization within that you studied or that you enjoyed?
I enjoyed at the time social psychology, actually, interestingly enough. It was really around the phenomena of helping. And the Kitty Genovese case in New York City was a big case that we studied in my social psychology class around helping and who helps and why they help and why they don't help. It was quite interesting.
What was that case? I don't remember that case.
Yeah, it was a murder case. It happened in the city in front of a brownstone building, and a lot of people saw what was happening. But a lot of people thought that someone else, since so many people were observing it, someone else would help and intervene, and no one actually did till it was too late and they died. And so they studied that from the perspective of helping. And then we also got into altruistic behaviors. Is that a reality or not? So that was a pretty interesting background of a class that I took.
Let me step there and just say this.
Yeah.
When you think of, because I'm always somewhat hypercritical of coaches, personal trainers, coaches, strength coaches, that you really need to understand things like psychology and behavior, at least at a base level. Because like you said, there's so much self-sabotage. Like there's so many false positives where you get results, but you get them the wrong way and then you lose them, right? They don't continue.
Sure.
And to have a coach with your background, do you see what I'm saying? Like when you look at, but somebody said to me like, well, wouldn't a really good coach have an exercise physiology degree? And I'm like, well, not that they wouldn't, but someone who's studying murder, altruistic cases, and understanding how the brain operates at that level, the ability to then kind of almost reverse engineer, or so I don't want to say lower, but reverse engineer. Okay, why are you like a dopamine reactor? Why are you like sabotaging yourself? Or okay, this shadow thing is actually real. This is not just some BS talk, or this is not right. So I just like point that out to people before you're quick to jump on and get an online coach and think, hey, I'm going to lose 10 pounds or just get ripped this summer. Like take the time to look at someone who's educated in a way that like, maybe if I make myself whole and healthy in a way, the side effect is I'll lose the 10 pounds and it doesn't come back. Right?
Yeah. So to piggyback on your wisdom, for me, one of the questions that I'm really fascinated is, well, why do you want to lose 10 pounds to begin with? I don't want to get sucked into the narrative that I want to lose 10 pounds and that is the beginning and the end of it, right? I'm more fascinated about why you want to lose it, because when you lose it, if you haven't dealt with the underlying issues, that's the impulse to even lose the 10 pounds to begin with. That's why, people yo-yo with their diets.
Okay, so let me ask you this. What you're saying, to clarify, because I think some people might miss this. Even many people out there are like, well, Jason, I have the urge to lose 10 pounds. I'm motivated to lose 10 pounds. And what you're saying is, well, at a deeper level of coaching, that's not necessarily a good thing. We need to look deeper. Why do you want to do that? Where a lot of people are like, well, I just want to lose it, so it's a good thing. So I'm going to go to the gym. And I feel that becomes my gym is my therapy.
Sure.
So instead of people being like, no, therapy is therapy, and let me look at some and getting rid of stigmas of getting mental health and mental health coaching and understanding people, or getting a coach that has a psychology background. I think I lost myself there because I was like, wow, okay. But as far as you're concerned with back to the coaching, where did you see, as someone with that deep background in the psychology, that, okay, HLC had and Paul had that, and I guess that kind of then mixed in and opening the door of the shadow? Like, what was that academic background of having a solid degree and studying cases like murders and so forth, then say, wow, this guy Paul, who if people go to his website and they're like, oh, he's hippie and he's doing rock gardens, this, right? But it's like, no, right? Like where did you find the connect? What was that moment that said to you, oh, it's here. This is where I need to go and check Institute HLC and so forth.
Yeah. So, the psychology, and I spent even more time getting into like organizational psychology, right? So, and that is what led me to appreciate systems thinking. I had my own physiological issues from competing in powerlifting and competing in college football, and wear and tear. It led to lower back issues. And I was trying to solve hormonal issues, lower back issues, sleep issues, dietary issues for myself. And because of my background in organizational development, I said, I want to understand the body holistically from a systematic standpoint. And that's how I found Paul.
Systems.
Yeah, systems of systems. Has the gut influencing the nervous system? Has the nervous system influencing the gut? How is the nervous system influencing the brain? They're all interconnected, like a symphony, right? And so I was tired of people just wanting to focus on the trumpet or the saxophone. I wanted to understand how they all fit together from a health standpoint. And that's what I appreciate about Paul. He was the predominant voice that I could easily resonate with from this systems thinking. I made that quick leap it was no problem. That made 100% sense. So I jumped in, immersed myself in holistic health, etc. And then that led me into let me explore the shadow work that we were defining. That led me into Journeys of Wisdom, and that led me several hundreds of hours of intensive courses with them. So I felt like the mental emotional piece and the holistic health piece I had. But what I would say for me was the one thing that was missing was the actual mechanics of coaching. I learned a lot of great content, but actually taking myself from point A to point B and with clients in an evidence-based approach in a way that was really strong and solid, like the gold standard for me, which was me then entering into another certification, which was with the Institute of Professional Excellence in Coaching. It's called IPEC. And so they're considered one of the best organizations on coach training.
IPEC, can you say that again?
Yep, IPEC, Institute of Professional Excellence in Coaching. So I got certified as a professional coach with them. It's a year-long program. It's intensive, yeah.
So take one step backwards that led
Yeah.
you there. Explain a little bit more what you meant by the mechanics of coaching, because I love that term.
Yeah, so
because coaching's not right. You get online, you see coaches, oh, you're going to do this. You get this app and it's 10 sets of 10 and here's your calories and you just eat 2,400 calories and you do your 10 sets of 10. You're going to lose the weight. And if you don't lose, it's because you weren't following the program to it, right? Like,
correct. Yeah, 100%.
Right. So yeah, what are the mechanics of coaching? I love that term.
Yeah. So for me, like they teach you all kinds of techniques and understanding. So first off, getting a formal coaching agreement. That's the first thing you do when you enter into a contract. And one of the first things that you do with every single coaching episode. So what do we want to accomplish for today? Why is that important? What would success by the end of our coaching session look like? And where do you want to start? Those 4 questions. So then you create a coaching agreement where you know where the client wants to go. There's alignment between coach and the coachee. And so too many times, to your point, the coach says, this is what you do. And too many times people think of coaches in the traditional athletic sense as a college football coach, which I did for several years as well. I tell you what to do and you just do it. And to me, that's not coaching. So that is almost like a metaphoric parent role. So from a psychological perspective, what a lot of people call coaching, I call parenting. And so
yes, I remember this term.
Yeah. So for me, a lot of coaches are parents of their coachees. And so what happens in many ways is that the coachee actually starts to see the coach as a parent, and then their historical childhood issues get projected onto the coach. So then next thing you know, if you get super compliant or defiant, it's in relationship to how now they are projecting their mother or dad issues on you, because you're just telling them what to do versus engaging them in a conversation with open-ended questions. So leading with who, what, when, how, and why, versus a closed-ended question is, did you do this? Yes or no? You know, if you can answer the question with a yes or no, that's a closed-ended question. So IPEC teaches you to navigate with your clients a way to negotiate and to help them explore themselves in your presence in a safe way, and allows them to explore themselves holistically, mentally, emotionally, intuitively, physically, the whole gamut. So to me, coaching is an art as much as it is potentially a science, but there is an art to engaging with the person because they're multifactorial. So that's why, again, I really liked the idea of exploring coaching as being the glue that brings the HLC, the shadow work. I did some other certifications in the Enneagram 20 years ago. I have my own personality assessment that I co-developed, a psychometric assessment. And then I also recently got a certification through somatic breath work. It's an entity that certifies coaches for breath work. So I've continued my educational journey, but those are some of the things in which I've tried to string along for my own development as a coach and what these different dimensions and aspects represent for me.
So I like the I love the analogy of the symphony, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like one of the things I've tried to talk to coaches when I've coached coaches or I've run departments or anything like that is the idea of when people ask me like, what's holistic to me? And it's also what led me to check and the Check Institute, or at least my connection and desire to continue. We're also interested about it is, it's not just about this. It's like the systems of the systems of the systems, right? Like it was the first thing that was really talking about like, well, it's not just what's going on with the athlete of checking the box, and it's not just what's going on with the athlete inside, but what's going on around the athlete.
Sure.
Right. Like, it's balancing in and out and outward and upward. And the holistic thing is the whole picture. So the more of the picture you can get with the client, the more of the picture the better, the more holistic, let's say I would define it per se, because there's not an exact, right. Like fortunately, or not fortunately, there's not an American Medical Association equivalent for holistic practices. Right. Whether that's good or bad, it's probably a whole nother thing. But when you say that coaching is more of an art and a little bit of a science, I would argue back, isn't it also the analogy of the symphony that it is sometimes the art and sometimes the science, and it's the balancing of that, of this, right? It's like it's always a system and a system of a system.
Yes, I'm just saying is if we were to get really techie,
when you say glue, then I'm like, okay, that makes sense. It's the tie that binds. Like sure. the holistic this, and maybe some parasite testing, or maybe we've got to look at blood pressure, or maybe we got to look at right, or maybe we got to look at trauma issue psychology, whatever it is. Like all that comes together with the coaching, because the coaching, like the communication.
Yes, right. For sure. Going back to the example, I want to lose 10 pounds, and so I'm curious about why. So, for example, they might not be able to lose weight because they have a lot of cortisol, a lot of poor eating, and a lot of high levels of insulin, right? So you could say, okay, well, it might be a nutritional issue. It might be a hormonal issue. It also might be a stress-related 100% that's producing the cortisol stress response. Because, for example, if they believe that I'm not good enough, and if I just lose this 10 pounds, I'll finally be good enough. And so I'm curious, ultimately, if they show up to anyone's office, says, I just want to lose 10 pounds. And if I take the bait as to just, it's all about the 10 pounds and not really understand that it's deep down, they really wrestle with self-acceptance and that they have the ability to be good enough in and of themselves, then no weight loss will sustain them for the long term that addresses the motivation for losing the 10 pounds in the beginning. So they might be so motivated to eliminate the I'm good enough, I'm not good enough belief. But if and when they lose potentially that 10 pounds, I can assure you that the minute they get it, those feelings and those emotions and those beliefs will come back to the surface, because they will have learned, I still feel like I'm not good enough.
Inadequate.
Yeah,
that goal will project to another goal.
It projects onto another goal, right? And then you're in this loop. Yeah. So we're in this loop of chasing things outside of ourselves to achieve something that can only be done through the inner work, which is happiness within, contentment, equanimity within. And that, in my opinion, cannot be achieved by an object, a relationship, a job, a dollar, any acquisition of anything in particular will never be able to address the I am not good enough or I am inadequate belief.
What about family or a significant other?
Yeah, to me, anything outside of self still doesn't solve the hole that's in the heart of a human being.
Also, I knew that would be something someone would say. What about you got to be whole? So you can. That's a whole other conversation. But yeah. Here's what I wanted to stop right there, because when you're talking about doing this with the client, and you're talking about going to IPEC.
I've gone to IPEC for their coach training program. Yes.
So this is a year-long thing.
Yeah.
You're at a higher level of coaching than, let's say, some of the coaches that I'll usually talk to or might watch or contact me, especially coaches that are in their first year or two. And when I worked with a lot of fighters, there's a good amount of them that are also coaches, so they've always been like, hey man, can you just throw me a diet I could send to people? And I'm like, okay, well, it's going to work, but it's not going to work. Right. Like how, if you, and if you don't kind of get to that next level of education, you never get the conceptualization of, the more you learn, the more you earn. Right. So with that said, for the coaches that aren't the higher level, that haven't, they're on that weekend certification for $5.99 in NASM or they're still kind of stuck in this realm. Well, I thought that if the law of thermodynamics says if they just eat this number, they're going to lose the weight. Right. But they're like, hey, what could you say to someone like, listen, you're working in a commercial gym, maybe you're working in a commercial gym, you're a new trainer, and what advice could you give them to help them get to that process? Maybe say to them, listen, here's something you could say or do to them in an open session, knowing that after they sign up, it's something you'd have to work on with time. Like if you're this coach and you're within your first year of being certified, you're making just enough to get by. If you could sign a few more clients, you could probably go get one of these better certs, and you want to do better. What's like a one tidbit you could give a newbie coach to help them with that deeper why, and not, like you said, take the bait?
I think it boils down to courage and curiosity is one tandem. The courage to acknowledge that I don't know everything, and I want to turn around and be a sponge and learn as much as I can from every client, with myself, with every session that you have, and being curious. There's a little statement that I appreciate that we talk in some coaching circles, which is people are never upset about what they think they're upset about. So if we can just remember that mantra, that no matter what comes out of your client's mouth with a question that you ask, just know by default, that's not the heart of it. I'm not saying it's not a symptom of it, but it's not the root of it. Yeah. And the other thing I think of, if you're a new coach, is how is you and your nervous system calm and regulated enough that you can create a psychological and physiological safe space for your client? Because if you will co-regulate with your clients.
Oh, and please explain. Please, okay, yes, I love that.
Yeah. So to me, if you're anchored and steady and you are regulated, you're a source of equanimity, serenity, peace. There's a rootedness within yourself, and you're not in your fight or flight mode, right? You're in your parasympathetic nervous system. And most people, including myself, we fluctuate between the sympathetic and the parasympathetic systems. So when a client comes to you, by default, they're stressed, by default. So when they're around you, if they can feel your parasympathetic system, it gives them an opportunity to relax in your environment. And therefore,
you mean when they come in, you shouldn't be like, all right, come on, Jason, let's go. All right, we're going to do some burpees. I'm going to get
right? I would say it could be that. I won't say never that. All it could be that. But if I'm saying that and having excitement through the lens of my parasympathetic system, then I'm all for doing those kinds of techniques. But if I am stressed and I'm amped, and then I'm doing the rah-rah and chapping their ass, then that gets back into I'm playing a parental figure and I'm projecting my own shit onto my client, right? So ultimately, if I can be in a space of my parasympathetic nervous system, I'm calmer, I'm relaxed, I'm anchored, then I can help co-regulate with my client.
Is there a trick or breathing exercise or something as a coach that they could do, let's say, a few minutes before their orientation or evaluation or something session? Or is there a way that, like when you say as a coach, I'd make sure I try to regulate, is there something they can do that you could give them as a tip right now to say, hey, do this right before a session, see if it kind of down regulates you a little bit?
Sure. So you can do a technique called acknowledge and validate. Okay. It's a great coaching technique. And so ask your client, how's your day going? Or tell me the biggest struggle you're dealing with as we're about to engage in this workout, and give them a minute to off gas. Now, rather than trying to fix them, rather than trying to provide advice or rush into your workout routine, that's nice to know, okay, etc., and you jump into things. Acknowledge and validate simply says, John, I hear you, man. It's normal to be frustrated with X, Y, and Z. And it's perfectly understandable that you feel that way. I hear you. I mean, that's acknowledge. Validate is simply is you're going through what you're going through, and you're going to be okay. And we'll work through it together. You have me with you. That's a simplified maybe version of that. But acknowledge.
So if you tell me how's your day, and I'm like, oh man, I just want to get this workout out. And Jason, the bills are out of control. The wife's pissing me off. It's like a horrible day at work. Like, just this is like I let's just do it. Like that was one I always get when I was up in Jersey and New York. Like that was my 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 of my first years of coaching in Hoboken. Yeah. That was like, I had a horrible day. Everything markets suck. Okay, here we go. What's your boom? What's I had a horrible day. Work sucked. Wife won't leave me alone. Like I'm done with it. Let's just get the work out of it. That's how my day went.
Yeah. So I'd say, thanks for sharing, John. And I want to tell you that if you're coming to me at 5 o'clock at night or 6 o'clock after work and you've had a long, stressed day, it certainly makes sense why you feel all stressed out. And I want to acknowledge that. And I hear you and I see you. It's simple as that. People want to be seen and heard. And if they can sense, if you're saying it from your heart with empathy, and you're not just bullshitting and you're not just pencil whipping it, they're going to feel heard and seen. And that's most of the time, that's all people want. Now, for me, the technique does not validate victimization thinking or woe is me. It just simply acknowledges that is their genuine experience. And I'm just acknowledging it without judgment. I'm not saying it's right or wrong, good or bad, etc.
So could you use the language of Jason? I understand. That was tough. But you know what? We all go through something like that. I'm going to be with you. We'll get through it today. And perfectly understandable how stressed you are. But
I can appreciate that. So it depends, John, because you just transitioned into a form of parenting. And I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but you're cheerleading them. Like, it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. Where I would say is,
I'm a horrible cheerleader.
Well, I would say, I would offer to say is maybe through the workout, I want them to process their emotions and not say it's going to be okay so fast. I might say, listen, we're going to do some movement patterns that are kind of tough today. Would you be willing to feel and not just dismiss, but feel into and use your movement as a way to somatically move that energy through the body? And then when we get done with the work, now that's not for every client, but it would be situational. And at the end, I would say, how did that feel? And are you in the same space emotionally where you were in the beginning? And they're like, no. And then I might come back to them and say, I appreciate the effort that you put in and you're willing to process your shit out on the gym floor, because some people would stuff it and just rip through weights. And sometimes you get injured that way. But you were intentional with your movement patterns. If you were doing a wood chop, you were very present with your body and feeling how you were going from left to right or right to left.
Or you might say that as they're doing the movement, be like that, Jason, that looked good. Or would you just save would you praise as you go in the session, or would you just do it at the end?
It's almost like a bio-individuality, right?
Is praise the right word?
You can use praise. I'm all for, like, you can champion people, you can praise them and celebrate them for sure. I'm just saying is, it's kind of like grabbing a tissue box and wiping their tears off for them and tell them it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay.
It's going to be okay.
Exactly. So to me, that's not my style, because I want to give them space to be their own guru. I want them to give them own space to process and learn how to self-regulate, help self-manage, self-parent, And I'm only there, so to speak, to help them and not go over the guardrails, right?
Well, can you repeat the phrase you said before? It was really good. You said something, I want you to work it out or feel the energy through the somatic, something through the movement.
Yeah. So it's using your workouts to somatically process your energy and your emotions that are stuck in the body. Yeah. Some people turn to yoga. Some people use walking. Some people will do workouts. Some people will do Tai Chi, Qigong. I mean, there's all different kinds of movements that when done to process the emotions, the stored energy, right, so to speak, in the body.
I like the other point you made, which is really important. This was something I had to deal with when I started training fighters, was the idea of, well, I've just got to tough it out through the workout, or that's my therapy session, so I just want to throw it harder. The phrase or the words of the phrase that you said, if you could repeat it because it was really well spoken, is I'm glad you were present and you worked through it, because some people will just, you said, like, emotionally rage, or you use a different word, and then not be in control and get injured. I'm butchering it. That's why I would like you.
Well, to me, what happens is they will take the anger out onto the weight.
Yes.
And then their technique tends to be disrupted. They're no longer really actually present. So a lot of times when we're angry, so angry or filled with fear, from a psychological perspective, it's a form of age regressing. I've emotionally regressed to projecting on this situation my historical conditioning as a child. So maybe my boss today at work in the market chewed my ass out. I interpreted my boss's ass chewing synonymous with my dad's ass chewing about my performance with school or sports growing up. So I've made my work boss, current life, my metaphorical dad, in the sense of I'm interpreting this as an ass chewing. I feel guilt and shame. And now by the time I get to the gym, I don't want to deal with guilt and shame because it's a very deeper emotion.
Much more painful.
Much more painful. So I'm going to use anger and then to cover that. And then I'm going to work out and I'm going to I'm going to go crazy. And so I would just say is be careful of those, because A, your age regressed into a little boy. B, you're in a trance, which is a whole nother psychological term, but you're very myopic, and then you're subject to injuries.
And expand a little bit more on the, you hit something that was great too, because in the course of the injury and you're not present, you're regressing to a child. Mm-hmm. And when you're throwing the weights around, I lost it. I'll have to come back to it, but
no problem.
Yeah, you have some gems. I can't wait to rewind and pull some of them, because I'm trying to keep up with the wording. And I will say this, because we didn't go through the background. We had an opportunity to work together for a few months on a startup company, and I do miss so much the way you speak. You have a masterful command of your vocabulary, and you hit one of your phrases I loved in the beginning, which was, in my opinionated opinion.
Yes.
And one of the best things that I'm glad you started doing your social media posts, and you started getting more out there on social media, and you started doing, you have the other Instagram I want to eventually get to and talk to you about, that you were doing some posting on, is that you speak really well. And it's like more people need to see you in the way, or hear you, versus hearing the guy that says, well, today I ripped it out on the machine because I took my anger out on the machine because it's therapy. Because then they say, oh, it's therapy. Oh, that's what I want to ask you. Explain part of the physiological, psychological problem with the fact that someone does that. They rip it out. I know basically it's a regression, dopamine hit, and false sense of control, and exhaustion, endorphin hit. So now I feel better for a little bit, pass out, go to sleep. And I can say, well, that's just good as therapy, right? Like, sure. Explain a little bit to the people out there why no, you can't say, like, coaches out there, especially if you're a doctor and it's telling people that that's your gym therapy. What are the downsides physiologically and physically of having that mentality of dealing with your inner emotions by slamming out the weight? And what's the false positive there? Like, what can you explain why are you feeling good and why that is like not really good in the long run.
Yeah. So, listen, there's always a positive and a negative. And you listed some of the positives. I temporarily feel better than I did before, right? So, I don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. I would say, okay, maybe there is a small present moment when depending upon your lens of perspective, from the perspective of the wounded ego, that feels better. So from that perspective, yay, it's a win. If we were to take a step up or a step above it and look at it from an observation standpoint, I'm more curious about how often do you work out like that? That's an important question for me.
Okay.
If you approach the gym a lot like that, then the next question becomes is there any what possibility actually is it that you're not really coming to terms with the core reason why you show up habitually to the gym angry, and that you're looking in a codependent way for the gym to let anger go. But the minute you wake
anger
up,
masks the shame, guilt, or deeper,
correct,
more painful emotion, right? That anger
correct.
is, I can speak from that. As someone who's been termed a violent communicator, which I kind of take as a badge of honor, but but in all seriousness, like as someone who's like, I openly admit, and I've talked to other coaches and clients about that, is anger is a very nice respite from the pain, right?
Sure,
like
it is. Yeah.
And if you're good at something like fighting or MMA or something like that, wow, that's a really false positive addiction to start getting into. Like, it's like replacing one addiction for another. Because like, okay, I don't want to go through the shame, guilt, or whatever else is underlying. So I'm going to get angry and need to slam out the weights or go fight or go spar, right? I think that's a great point for a lot of people to understand. It's like, it's that, yes, like maybe one day, like you just feel bad, you got to go get a workout, feel great. But if that's every day, 5 days a week, that's your only motivator, we've got something else as a coach we got to look at.
We do. And that's important. And at the end of the day, it becomes almost like the gerbil on the wheel. Like the next morning, it's going to hop on the wheel and it's going to use the gym to deal with that. But you're back on the wheel again. And I want to know what gets you on the wheel in the first place, so that you come to the gym angry and that you think you need the gym as a therapeutic tool with rage. I want to know is, how do you address, heal, or explore the underlying dynamics that is the impulse, so to speak, as to what initiates this process? And if we can look at that, then the need to use the gym, like it's already stressful enough to stress the body physiologically in the gym. You're going to get a cortisol response, appropriately so.
Especially remember, we're talking 5 p.m., 6 p.m., 7 p.m. at night, right? These are the people that are like, I got done with a hard, I'm trying to be nice. I know it's supposed to be like a savage, the podcast, but I'm so happy that you're here to speak about this, because what really drives me nuts are all these like alpha male social media, right? Because in my realm of coaching and where I've been with the fighters and all, it's all this like, you got to train every day, you got to put the breath strip on, and it's like, okay, well, whoa, that's not sustain. And then you get an everyday average person. Well, I'm gonna listen to this, or this is the way I'm gonna train, and then they end up in front of you like, oh my God, you're a disaster. We have so much stuff we've got to unpack and unravel, right? So what is your feeling? I want to goad you into some things. What's your feeling on what's out there in the social media content world of these, what I call them, like these extremists? These go to gym every day. If you want to be a man, go to gym every day. You take it out on the weights. That's how you deal with it. Like, is that how a man really deals with it every day? Like, because that's what they're promoting, right, Jason? They're promoting every time you go to the gym, and it's all black and white. The video is all black and white. Like, I'm guilty of it. I have it on my Instagram. But I like the Spartans and 300 and nights. I'm just like kind of geeky that way. But this idea that it's always, and I got to do the cold plunge in the morning, and it's just like, whoa, like, why is this all necessary? Because I feel what they're, like I said, I respect that you're saying you don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. But what I'm talking about almost is this like Same complaint we have in the marketing world of like McDonald's market a hamburger that looks beautiful, delicious, and makes you happy, but they give you a thing that's poison, shitty, and looks like that big. Coaches are marketing the idea to be a man is you're supposed to take your anger out on the weights. That's the appropriate therapy. And that's I mean, there's doctors, there's people, bodybuilding coaches, weightlifting coaches that come into contact, they drive me nuts. So I'm going to kind of pull you into it because you speak it so eloquently of here's all the things that are going to go wrong. And to know Jason, this is you played a slightly physical sport, right? So what was your background in football?
I played defensive line.
Okay, where at? And what? Give me where you're at, height, weight, 40. Because listen. By the way, you look great. Like, you look good. Face looks good. Shoulders are bobbing. But I don't think people realize you're a pretty big dude.
Yeah. Let's see. Well, I competed in powerlifting when I was 17, 18, 19, around 200, 220 range. I was pretty lean, but pretty strong, and then I played college football. So I walked on at Arizona State, and then I finished in small college in Ohio called Marietta College, where I spent most of my time in small college football, actually. Bench press, I think my best one historically was I did 500, and I was trying to go for a double, and I partially tore my pec. I've squatted up, I don't know, it was mid 600s. And then I deadlifted like 680, 690 or something like that in my early 20s.
And I want to make the point that if someone were to jump on and listen to some of the way you're talking about handling, right? Like, hey, we got to get this deeper. This is you projecting your mind, right? Where you've got these Tates and Wes Watsons, and these are the running trends of like, no, I don't want to hear about your baby issues. A man's off, they just go to the gym. You take the therapy out of the gym. You're not the typical 155-pound holistic guy talking to, listen, man, it's just your parents projecting. You're a guy who's been in a very physical sport at a high level.
Sure.
You've lifted a lot of fucking heavy weights. Listen, man, you've got that meathead background. You ripped your pec trying to go for a heavy weight, right? Where'd you grow up? Where'd you, right? Tell everybody where you grew up. I know.
I was born in the Bronx and raised in Long Beach, Long Island, on the borderline of Brooklyn, Queens and Long Island.
Yeah, so you're a New York kid, so you're not some soft flower that, right?
No, I mean, and in New York,
you're very humble. I know you're not going to say it. You're very humble.
To your point, you have to, in order to survive, in New York in particular, there's a nuance of, you have to get after it on a certain level, and you have to, there's an assertiveness on the East Coast that is not in most places.
I once pulled out some of your aggression, and I still kind of was very happy about it. I liked what I saw. To kind of reverse fields, because I don't know how much time I have with you, but I do want to get this in, even if we got it. So we got to work together, and I remember one time you kind of took me to task on a team message, and do you remember this?
Yeah,
man. When you did that, let me ask you, when you did that to me?
Yeah,
not did that to me. I'm sorry. When you said that, right?
Yeah.
And I don't remember the exact words. I remember the feeling. What do you think I felt?
I would predicting that you were pissed off. You were frustrated.
By what you said?
By what I said and how the dynamics were unfolding.
By the way the dynamics unfolding, I was very upset and obviously angry because I was kind of like being right. But when you stepped in and just said what you said, and then I that was it. I didn't say anything. I literally was like happy and laughed. I swear to God, because I felt like, yeah, he's kind of like me. I felt like he really did. He did really do a lot of fucking work on himself and calm down. Like I felt, because so it's a very interesting, right? God, it's a funny story to tell. So Jason and I worked on a startup of what was literally a global company that was doing corporate health and wellness specifically targeted towards high-level corporate people that had functional depression. Like, wasn't that was like our thing? Like,
Well, that was one aspect of it. Yeah, for sure.
right. Yeah, to 100% simplify it, right? But we had a deeper system of way we were going to attack the corporate wellness. Let's just say, right? Because we can get deeper into that, but like it was a whole, like if you listen to the way Jason's been speaking about getting to the deeper lessons and having the holistic and the coaching, that's where I really do think that there was almost lightning in a bottle with that. To be honest with you, I really do. I thought the way you organize things, I've never seen anybody just like do spreadsheets like you do spreadsheets. But anyway, the funny story I tell this, definitely. So there's a startup. It's doing some high level coaching, corporate wellness, and we have coaches in like, I don't know, like 8 different countries, 6. How many? 6 different countries?
Probably I think 4: England, Denmark, Australia, and there was one, or no, not Australia, but she was an Australian who was in Bali.
Bali, yeah, that was the girlfriend boyfriend combo. The girl's
yeah,
a fighter.
yeah.
The girl's an MMA fighter.
She is. Yeah. Christy. Yeah.
Christy and Ryan.
Yeah.
Christy and Ryan. Yeah, they were really cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my God. So so many funny stories. Ryan was the guy that I hired as a graphic designer, not knowing that he couldn't draw.
That's right.
That was my blunder that I remember talking to him when he was like, Joel, mate, I can't, it's a horrible accent, but he's like, Joel, mate, I don't draw. And I'm like, what? How are you a graphic? I admitted, I skimmed over the interview. He was cool. It was Christy's girlfriend. They lived together in Thailand. He was good at all the video production stuff, right? Mm-hmm. But when we had to actually get really down to the nitty gritty creative, like from scratch, so there was a startup and it did that. I come aboard the company to replace someone who's basically the head of marketing. I get involved with the company because I'm in a romantic relationship with the CEO. I get introduced. Listen, at this point in my life, Jason, it's like the stories are, I might as well just tell the truth. I don't think half people would believe me, but I literally flew back from Florida after getting in a fight with someone I was seeing, met on a Tinder app, met this girl who's still a woman, one of the most brilliant minds I would ever say I think I came around. I had a chance to talk to her, brilliant mind. So many good things I have to say about her, but came back, went on a date with her, and first person I think I went on a date where I spoke something like 8, 9, whatever hours straight, right? Like we spoke all through the night and crazy topics, and found out that she was doing a startup and it started with all ego. It was great. It was all ego. It was like, I do the best holistic training. No, I have the best holistic trainer. Well, where's yours from? I was like, well, I bet you he's not Czech. And then it was like, he was a former coach at Czech, right? Like it was like, wait, huh? And we hit it off and it was great. So when I got brought in, I was kind of like given this lay of the land because you guys were at a level of coaching and work that I kind of knew about from knowing some other coaches in some of your spheres, but I hadn't done any of that education. Like the most I had read was HLC2. Like I took all the materials and notes to HLC2, and then I got more into the Polyquin side. So a lot of the shadow stuff and getting into that and seeing how you guys were putting that together, like all of that. But so I get into it basically by not default, but I get introduced and I felt like a shit ton of friction when I came in. And I really felt like, it was like I had to tiptoe and I had to be careful, but I really did respect a lot of people and think they were good. I just could see 1 or 2 people that were off. And so I was kind of led to believe that you and I wouldn't get along. Right. So it was like, I don't know if you're going along with Jason, and I don't know if I'm just kind of like, all right, well, I'm kind of weird. All right. It's like, from fucking New York. I don't know how I usually get off of New York. And so, and then I was in a very aggressive state in my life where I had just come back from Israel. COVID ended. I was on this mission to like rebuild my life. I was rebuilding a business, and I was on a tear. And you guys were in this very like chill vibe, right? Like, I still thought this was awesome, but this was new to me. Remember how we had to have our own coaching, right? So we had to have our own coaching with, who's the guy that we did the coaching with?
John McMullen.
Yes, that was it, man. All right. I don't know why I forgot that name. I don't know how I forgot that name, but I haven't told these stories in forever. So we did these. So, right, like that, what Tim has always left an impression me. That was, I thought, what was awesome about that company, where I thought that, again, coulda, shoulda, woulda, but I always try to focus on what was really positive, right? Like, so I thought that was cool, but I kind of, so to wrap, oh God, I got off on the tangent. So I had so many stories in my head, but this idea of when you and I had this conflict, I kind of was like, man, this guy's always talking about being chill, and he's always talking about, like, because I always loved what you did with the spreadsheets. I was like, we need a Jason, all his organization, everything put together in the system of the systems. Like I thought you were the most necessary person at that company. 100%. I think that if you made the analogy of glue, right, to coaching, you were the glue of the company. You were the operations. You had operations analysis. You had all that logical side of which is, whenever I've done consulting, small, large companies, when I've worked at big banks, I agree with you. Like, systems are systems are systems, and you're only as good as your system. And communication is a huge part of system, and experience is a huge part of systems. And then you had that whole side, but then you had the whole coaching side. Like, you knew what it was like to be a coach. And then you weren't a bitch. Like, you weren't a bit, you know what I mean? You were a big guy, and I was kind of like, all right. And then when you like did that, I was like, oh, okay. So he's not bullshitting me. He wasn't just some like gentle giant who was calm, and he had some shit he had to work through and get through. And then I really appreciated the time that we had in California. You sat out there quite a few times when we talked, and I always had a tremendous amount of respect for you. And I just I missed the way you talked. I missed the vocabulary you used, and I'm trying to figure out a way to edge out of this into a better saying. I feel awkward and comfortable, man. I think I missed you. I miss working around you, man. You were stimulating. You were intellectually on point every time. You never missed a beat, and 100%, man.
Can I just say thanks, John? I appreciate you.
You're very welcome.
I appreciate your reflections and some of the times that we have worked together. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's break off and to go. I want to give a little bit of time to what you're doing presently, as far as what is Enneagram, what is Inner Compass, what is that coaching and personality, and a little bit about the how you're looking at breath work. Is why was that the next thing you wanted to do?
Sure. So most of my time and energy for a long time has been spent in the Enneagram. So it's a human personality system, 9 personality types. There's positive and negative characteristics with each of the 9. I got certified in it like 20 plus years ago. It was one of the first things I got certified in. At the time, I did it with a good friend who was a PhD clinical psychologist. We got done with it. He was very holistic in orientation as well. And he and I were on the same page about thinking about this from a systems standpoint. And we both came away from that thinking that in true form, we can make a better assessment than what they are offering. And then what we see in surveying the Enneagram assessments that are out there. So we spent 10 years, I don't know, on and off, designing, redesign. Yeah, roughly designing, redesigning, writing up.
You spent 3 days weekend certification doing this? This is
I took a week long to get certified in their system, but from that, we spent 10 years working on this personality assessment and scoring it just right, the secret sauce.
Oh, wait, so you took what one company designed and then deviated out something else that was more specifically geared, like, what did you do? Okay. Sorry.
Well, they taught you about the Enneagram and how to use the Enneagram as a coach. They had their own version of an assessment. And so it was good, but not great. And so he was a clinical psychologist by background. He used to administer the Minnesota Multi-Personality Inventory and was a master at that. I had my background in organizational development and my psychology background and systems thinking. And so we fused together to say, how do we make this better, in the sense of how do we create an assessment that A, is accurate, really accurate, and it shows holistically all 9 personality types and presents it back to the client to say, I don't want to just present their core type and here's your positive and negative traits and your path of growth and your path of decline. These are just Enneagram model terminology. Within the Enneagram world, these are very familiar language and terms within the model. So the typical Enneagram world teaches things in light of 4 of the 9 personality types. You have your core type, you have a wing type, which is your adjacent to, and then a path of growth and a path of decline. And they spend all of their time talking about how you play in those 4. He and I were saying, well, it's declared that we have all 9 types within us. I want to assess all 9 types. I mean, it's like, from an exercise coach standpoint, is I am only going to assess your pelvis and your lumbar spine and ignore your cervical spine curvature and your thoracic spine curvature. And I'm like, you have the data. You can easily get that data. So we developed a test that would test people for all 9 types, create a graph that shows all 9 types, and then from that, create an interpretation methodology that accounts for how are you using all 9 types to deal with your false core belief that you have about yourself since childhood. And then as a result, that took on a life of its own, and I used that along with the check stuff. So,
what did you put us? Remember, we did that. What did you put me through? What did you put us through? Was that the new one that you're talking about?
Yeah, that's the one I've done all along. So,
okay.
Yeah. And
that's the one so that I was crazy.
I wouldn't say crazy.
Crazy.
Crazy. There you go.
8s are the best. They're the coolest ones.
Yeah, I mean, that's a typical 8 scene. And so that
I love this whole thing. I think personality tests and assessments are where it's at every level, from coaching, if you want to make anybody better at anything,
right.
I think understanding their personality, which helps you understand how they communicate, why they're communicating, what they're communicating. And then, like you said, I liked how you looked at it from the idea of, okay, systems of systems of systems. Let me not only test how the trumpet's playing. Let me see how each instrument's playing, and why do you only play the flute at this point, but when this happens, you're always in the bass. Can you explain a little bit more about what it took in those 10 years? Where was the aha breakthrough of, okay, I wanted to study the other systems, and you said the first thing was how do we make it better? How did you make it better? What did you have to crack? What did you have to crack or get around to say, okay, this is why it's better? Or what was wrong?
Right. Well, we explored how can we ask questions that really get to the heart and the motivation of each of the 9 types, and have enough of those questions to really solicit and identify how much people resonate with the very core desires and motivations and fears of each of the 9 types. So we went back and forth on designing the questions to really force people to declare where they're coming from and how much they resonate with each of those sets of questions. We also realized that we wanted to use
an example. Could you give us an example of one sentence and how that structure forces them to declare? What is active about that language?
Well, it's a Likert scale. So we don't do true or false. Okay. We do a Likert scale. And that, for us, that was really important decision that we made. So it could be things like, I feel very compulsive need to help people even when they don't even ask for it. And so do you strongly disagree all the way to strongly agree? That's one of several hundred, not several hundred, but there's 153 questions to the assessment.
And why was it significant to make the decision to go to the scaled response? What was
because it loses the sensitivity. If I just say yes, no, then I'm losing a sense of sensitivity to the degree of something, right? So and the other thing is some people, it would be, I didn't want to get into the zeros and ones. I wanted to know, how much does this resonate for you, basically? How much do you feel emotionally tugged in answering this question? And then we have our secret sauce of how we score that and calculate all of that. So it was coming up with the questions, coming up with the scale, the Likert scale, coming up with the secret sauce behind the scenes, coming up with the graph. How is the graph going to get presented? How do we interpret all 9 scores in light of the core type that they are? And so there's all kinds of iterations in presenting it and taking clients through it and asking as a part of the pilot, and then asking them, what did you like or what did you not like? What was, and you're just basically doing customer market knowledge, right? But you're doing it one at a time. And then we just kept on adapting. And then we were starting to write the reports. What gets included, what doesn't get included, how do we present the report? Is this language over the top? Is this language just about right? Et cetera. So we tested the report that people got. So it took a long time to develop to where it is today, for sure.
And where do you, and if you're a coach, so I always like to go back to, it would probably be worth exploring one day in my whys, why I get triggered by commercial gyms and the level of coaching that I kind of run into that. My former guest I had on, Brian, who's also the Czech, we had worked together for a long time. And we used a guy I spoke earlier about that got into Czech with me. We always couldn't understand, or what's the right way to put this? We postulated or theorized that if you wanted to make the greatest change in like the way healthy people or people conduct themselves, you would use like Paul Chek's book, Eat, Move, Be Healthy. That would be your like high school health and wellness class. Like instead of learning sexual reproduction and not that you don't have to learn that, but we all got into a stupid, especially at least in the Northeast, right? You got into this stupid gym, like one per period. You had to have the instead of physical gym, you had the health and wellness class, right? Imagine if you had that period and it was, how to what the difference in the parasympathetic system was, understanding like those things. So it'd be worth explaining why, but I always feel like then that would have the greatest effect, because there's so many people that just go, the abundance of people that go to all these places, we would instantaneously be able to change a lot of the health and so forth in the country. But so again, that's my, again, like you see, like it's my trigger, but I like to go back to, if you're a coach and you're kind of getting your mind blown right now, right? And you're like, oh crap, I'm at like an LA Fitness, or I'm at a Crunch, or I'm at a Planet Fitness, or I'm trying to think of some of those, like the low cost price model gyms. And you've got your ISSA, or maybe you got your NASM, and you're like, man, I just learned a kinetic chain, and this guy's now telling me I'm projecting my dad onto my like, where do you tell a guy like that, where's his entry level to start to work to your level because I think that a coach at that level, a first step is understanding personality. Like understanding your own personality is a huge step in being a better coach. Would you agree? Right? Like,
yeah, I mean, you can't give, right, as Paul would say, you can't give what you don't have. So if you don't do your own inner work, you sure as shit cannot help people help themselves if you don't know what the fucking journey is like yourself.
So where's that newbie start? Where would you say to them, like, do you have like an entry level course that you'd say, hey, listen, if you've been training 6 months to a year, you just got your weekend ISA cert, would you suggest to them, do you have like an entry level beginner thing? Do you have a suggestion on how they can do that? Or like, think about it, they're getting their mind blown. They're like, holy shit. But we both can tell you from all the years we've been in this, if you can start understanding that these small concepts, and I understand them at a very surface level, and they do wonders for me with coaching. Where could you suggest they go or start?
Well, I mean, a selfish plug. They can go to my. They can go to my. They can go to my. They can go to my website. Yeah, they can go to my website and they can take the assessment and connect with me to do a deep dive review of your personalized results.
So give that. What's that? Good. Give that. What's the website?
Yeah, it's innercompass9.com. So
Just Intercompass 9.
Yeah, INNERCOMPASS, 9.com. And you can either just take the assessment itself without connecting with me, or you can take the assessment plus a 90-minute session with me, and it's called a deep dive review, to really get an understanding of your psychological fingerprint. And then from there, depends on if you wanted to work ongoing or not, but whatever next steps are.
So this assessment the assessment that they take, is that the long assessment you just explained?
I only have one. I only have one assessment in the sense that they have to take. It's 153 questions. Takes about 40 minutes uninterrupted, and you'll instantaneously get your report. And then,
do they pay for that? How much is that?
So that's $59.99.
Okay,
just for the report, just for the assessment, and you get a report with that. If you want to connect with me for the report plus 90 minutes of my time, it's $2.99.
And special discount for us, it's $3.99 if you mention our show.
Touche.
I got you, Jay.
There we go.
Trust me on the marketing. Trust me on the marketing.
Sounds good. And I send you an additional an addendum report to the report that you got when you took the assessment as well. And that's when we would map out, as you said, how are you using why am I a trumpet player under these conditions? Why do I gravitate to the violin over here? And everything in between, so that there's a roadmap to move forward however you want. At least you'll understand your own patterning, your own conditioning, your own limiting beliefs, how you self-sabotage, how much you spend in the left hemisphere versus right hemisphere of the brain, your emotional intelligence, relationship issues.
Why is it important to know how much time you spend in the right versus the left hemisphere of the brain?
Yeah, well, so for me, if someone is heavy on the left side of the brain, usually they're disconnected from their body.
What do you mean? What do you mean disconnected from their body?
In the sense of somatic, they tend to be in their head thinking and ruminating and ideating and studying and sucking up more knowledge and information. And exactly. So, and as a result, they don't feel comfortable in their body. So when you ask someone who's a very heavy thinker to actually know what it's like to feel and get in touch with what you're feeling, they get very nervous with that kind of stuff. And then talking about right side of the brain is, in regards to creativity, in regards to innovation. Maybe you're struggling at work and you want to figure out, am I on the right career path? How do I pivot with my career? Or if I want to be a better leader, what are the innate talents and strengths that I do have that I can do more of? And so we would navigate, some of that terrain, how well you work with teams, the whole gamut. So I have real quick, I haven't had anyone ask me anything that they're struggling with that I can't look at their results and at least give them a solid pointer as to why that's occurring.
Wow. Okay, that's powerful. Say that again. So just they do the $2.99, they do the program with you, you do the assessment, and you've never had anybody say that again. That's important.
Yeah, I have never not had a situation where I can help people understand why they're doing what they're doing for the reason that they're coming to me for, whether it's relationship struggles, career struggles, health struggles, parent struggles, sibling struggles. It could be how I self-sabotage my relationship with my wife, my relationship with my kids. I have chronic back pain. You name the symptom, I can at least definitely offer them a pretty clear indication, at least from a mental emotional standpoint, either the root cause or significant drivers as to what's driving the reason why you are reaching out to me in the first place.
Wow, that's powerful. And that's powerful because let me flip gears. And if you're somebody out here who buys personal training and coaching, right, to spend $2.99 to get, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but to get almost a guarantee that you're going to have something concrete to tell them, this is why you're doing this. Because, right.
Yeah.
That's less than like a starter jump starting package at your local gym to meet 3 days a week, to stand on the goddamn stair stepper and have a guy count for you.
Yeah,
right?
I appreciate it. Yes, I've been doing this long enough to feel comfortable and confident to say, I can't think of a time when someone said this was a waste of my time. Actually, this is an interesting, I've gotten this a lot, and there's other coaches who I've certified in my methodology who have reported to me very similar statements. But it goes to something like this. I don't even know the person. Many times I'll just send them a sample of, what do you want to accomplish during this 90 minutes? And what's important to you. And that's it. By the time I'm done, and I've never met them, I don't look them up online. I don't care. I don't actually want to know anything. All I do is I look at their
blind. You want to go in blind.
I want to go in blind, and I just look at their results and I give them an interpretation based upon what they're coming to me for. And I've had dozens of people unsolicited say to me, I don't understand how you know me better than I've ever known myself with 153 questions. How did you arrive at knowing me this well? No shit. I mean, I swear that's happened so many times. And
I went through it, and I went through one of the later versions, because it was only a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
I found it amazingly accurate. I can attest to it. I don't want to introduce it like an infomercial that way. That, hey, but you know, after you saying what you're saying, it's like I can attest to that. I enjoyed it thoroughly. I wasn't as surprised as some other people were, because at the accuracy, I should say, or like, because doing some other personality tests, it's almost you go into it thinking, hey, whatever you think it is, it's the opposite. Like, just like you said, like whatever you think you're mad at, nope, it's something else. It's like, sure. So I remember there was one person who was very docile and quiet, and she was on the coaching side. She was a sweetheart too. And her and I slid to the same number. I think there was some, right. Why is her name escaping me right now? She was the second head coaching with you. Blonde.
Yeah, but she wasn't a type 8 though.
No, she wasn't. We slid into the same number. Like we were ones or something. Like, yeah, right. I know this is because I remember it being like, wait a minute, and then I'm going to tell you where's my report. I'll find it. But it was something that. Okay, correct me so I don't screw this up and then lose the power of all the statements you just made. When you are, let's say you donned me an 8, right? Mm-hmm. Then you have where you can slide to the other instruments in the parameter, right?
Yeah. So there's in a sense, your core type indicates your core issues or struggles with life. So the type 8, independent of you, but all 8s struggle fundamentally with. I am powerless, and the shame of being vulnerable or being weak, and the fear of being vulnerable. Yeah. So I don't want to be vulnerable. I don't want to be weak, and I feel powerless. That is an infancy, childhood conditioned experience that has been adopted since childhood, from which you put those glasses on and you see the world through that lens. And then
if you have those, what are you acting like? Like, I don't want people to think that if you're saying, oh, where your things are weak, vulnerable, then you're a weak person.
So at the end of the day, you have access then to 9 personality types to manage that. So naturally, one of the primary drivers within the type 8 is to show up as a challenger, powerful, demanding, straightforward, argumentative, challenger. So in one sense, those are all what we call compensations for the deep down belief that you're weak. Yeah. So I always say is, it's metaphorically back in the day, it's the small guy in the bar that wants to pick on the biggest guy, to kick his ass, to tell everyone that he's a badass. So in a sense, that's what the type 8 does. Deep down, they're the little boy that's afraid.
Napoleon complex?
Napoleon complex, exactly. And so that's an example of a type 8. But if you take the 8 on the surface based on their behaviors, you'd say, shit, it's a pretty powerful person. But if you peel the curtain back, you'd see what the motivation is I am so powerful to compensate for feeling weak. So in one way, when I work with 8s, I know off the bat that their bark is not as bad as the bite.
Got a pretty good bite.
I'm sure you do, and I'm sure every 8 will say that they have a kick-ass bite for sure.
I miss you. I miss you, and I miss doing this.
Yeah.
I say this: as an 8, my fear is like I'm going to I feel like I always have to do more because I'm going to be weak. Because I feel that the losses I've had before I'll lose again, and I won't be strong enough to keep the things that I have, or right, like.
Yeah, so I would invite you to consider that that's coming from a place of weakness as a precursor, as a prequel to all of those behaviors. Like you wouldn't be, I guess, and my interpretation is, what I hear you saying is fundamentally the belief that I am weak is what drives you forward.
Like how would you put it? Like, I have to make more money, or I have to get another deal, or I have to do another business because, I just got my son back. Like, the deep, and I've been very open about this, but I just got custody back of my son 2 years ago.
Right.
So I always will sometimes have this thing like, well, what if my ex flips again? Or what if I have to go back a quarter? I can't lose my house, or I got to stay in a really nice neighborhood. And I love my neighborhood. I love my home. I really love where I'm at, but I will admit to using that fear motivator of, man, if you don't do this extra hour of work, like if you don't work the weekend, like you could lose this. And I don't know, like that's where it comes from for me. So,
yeah. And so I would say what do you think is the story underneath what you just shared? What's the narrative you tell yourself underneath that story?
I don't want my son to be disappointed in me. And I want my son to grow up better than I did. Both
and sure. And so why is your son growing up better than you did? What does that represent to you?
Purpose and life fulfillment.
Yeah. Okay. So let me say it this way. How did you grow up? What did you feel growing up that you drew the conclusion that you didn't want that for your son? So
disconnected relationship with father, disconnected and difficult relationship with father.
And how did that make you feel?
Unloved, unappreciated, and unheard.
And what's underneath the unheard?
I get stuck right here.
Okay.
I have this core belief that the higher purpose in life, whether you want to call it the universe or God or whatever God you want to call it, I do believe in that. And I believe part of that is that family, like your legacy, your son, if you happen to take a wife, if you happen to have a daughter, you have a commitment to something higher that you make sure that you give them a better world than you had, or you give them a better life than you had. Like I feel that's, and I don't know where that purpose comes from because I'm not deeply religious. I didn't go to church my whole life. I didn't, right? But I feel that when I spent my time in Israel and I did a lot of my soul searching work there, like that felt so strong and internally and gave me in peace, is that my purpose is my son. Like, and being
sure.
So
I understand.
I can't get under that to be like, so yeah.
So what would happen if your son didn't continue to move the bar forward and regressed to your version, or lower? What would you feel?
Regressed.
What about, you're talking about you want to leave it better for your son?
Like I want my son to have a more love.
Okay, so right. So what would happen if he didn't? What do you feel if he didn't have that?
Pain.
Describe the pain.
Failure.
Okay.
Failure. Yeah.
And so what does failure represent to you? Deep down.
No value.
Okay.
I said that as a what is value? I'll take deeper feelings for 200, Jason.
Yes.
I don't know how to say it more than that. Failure means failure. It's dishonorable. It's disrespect. It's
So let me, because of I know we're winding down.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
No. It's okay. Let me just offer this for you to consider. I'm curious. What about if I were to say it wasn't necessarily value? And tell me on a scale of 1 to 10, like 1 meaning, hell no, Jason, you're way off, and 10, that makes a lot of sense. I would say on a scale of 1 to 10, what if I were to say that it wasn't that you are afraid of not being the value and the respect, but those things represent the fact that you're weak and vulnerable and you're powerless. You were powerless to do for your son what you couldn't do for yourself. And your son, if he doesn't get powerful or doesn't step up to the plate, you would just reinterpret his actions through that lens of power. I'm powerless to make a difference for my kid.
What do you mean by step up to the plate?
Because really what you're asking your son to do is step up to not, to receive what you're trying to give him as a gift of making things better. Because through the lens, potentially it would be, I feel powerless if my son doesn't. If my son doesn't do those things, then ultimately it's going to reflect back to me the powerlessness.
There's nothing I want him to do. Like, that's the thing. I don't know. Like, I don't want my son to be more wealthy or more successful or higher educated. Yeah. I want him to feel seen, heard. I want him to feel loved.
Yeah. So you want him to feel and experience what you yourself didn't feel when you were a kid.
Yes.
And then that is associated with, as a result of me experiencing that as a child, I felt powerless to do anything about it.
But it's still a failure. But that's the truth. But wouldn't that, then wouldn't I be correct in feeling that I was powerless and useless and a failure? Like, when does like the ownership of the fact that you did fail?
Say that one more time.
When do we have to recognize the self-ownership that we did actually fail? Like, if I were to say, you know what, I'm not going to work the extra hours. I'm going to go party. I'm a single guy. I'm going to go party in Florida, Miami. And I'm going to go do this. I'm going to spend my money on drugs and partying. I'm not really going to worry about saving. I'm not going to worry about this. I'm not going to worry about taking him here for this experience. Like, that's failure. Like, would that not be considered failure? And
can you indulge me for a moment? So as a coach, I wouldn't take your bait, because I would say you're trying to distract yourself from the heart of what I'm offering you to consider, that you experienced what you're trying to do and cultivate for your son is to give him what you didn't give to you, what you didn't have, what you perceive that you didn't have in your childhood. And that left you weak, vulnerable, and powerless to do anything about it. So now that you're an adult, I'm going to compensate for that, and come hell or high water, I'm going to bust my ass for my kid to give him what I didn't have.
But why is that not a righteous purpose? Or
I'm not here to say whether it's right or wrong. What I would offer for you to consider, though, is a compensation that is based upon a false belief. I would challenge anyone to say is righteous.
Oh, say that again. Say that again.
Yeah. If you are coming from a place of a false belief that I am powerless, and I compensate by moving hell on earth for my son not to face what I felt, even though it's labeled as righteous, I would challenge you to say, if you're coming from motivated by a false belief, no matter how much the righteousness looks symptomatically, it's still false.
So a false belief, a belief from a compensation is a belief formed from a compensation cannot be righteous.
Correct.
Wow. Okay. All right.
It'll make you feel good because it soothes the motivational wound of where you're coming from. And this is not about being a good dad or a bad dad or anything in between. So I want to be clear. I'm just saying is when we're coming from those places emotionally and we're compensating for them as a result of these false mental and emotional beliefs and emotional states, the byproduct is always an effort that is false. You can't, as Paul would say, you can't make chicken salad out of chicken soup. I mean, you can't make chicken shit out of chicken salad.
Yeah. Wow, I remember that one. You can't make chicken salad out of chicken shit. I remember
Right.
that
So
one.
as a
Man,
result, in this situation, your false belief that I am powerless is chicken shit. And when you compensate and it looks really good on the surface and it might taste good, deep down, when you start really digesting it, it's still shit. Now that's a hard pill. What I just shared is really challenging to people's
Very,
ego, very
very.
much, because they've invested so much in fixing what they think is broken, that if I were to say your fixing is just as negative as the root of the issue, because that says to you, fuck, I've invested 20 years in trying to fix and reconcile this shit, and I'm doing it because of a false belief, but I'm trying to reconcile. Like, we have good stories of how we've seduced ourselves into putting nobility into our efforts. And again, I'm not approaching this as a judgment to you or anyone else. It is more to say is, can we take a step back? It goes to the diet of the 10 pounds. Why am I so intentional and so emotionally reactive to making my son's life better? Now, I'm not saying don't. I'm just saying is, but why is that? And if you say, well, I want to give him what I never had, then it sounds like you're projecting upon him your inner child struggles onto your son, versus saying, let me deal with my own shit, right? And then heal myself to the best of my ability. And I know this isn't like sequential and it always works beautiful. I have my own daughter and I have my own struggles.
Yeah.
But it's really saying is, how can I do less of the projection game to allow them to be free to figure themselves out? Why do I have to project my wounds onto them and have them live out and manage themselves around my wounding? And it's a very different dynamic when we can see with clarity why we're motivated, how and why we're motivated to do the behaviors that we're doing. I'd say 9 out of 10 of them, just like you see the iceberg where it says 10% conscious and everything else is unconscious. I would say, okay, so 90 to 95%, we think we're conscious, but we're unconsciously behaving in a way that we are unaware of.
And what we're unaware of, that's part of what you find out when someone goes and takes your test and schedules a session with you.
Correct. So then we would dig into this false core belief and then help understand how all of those 9 types on your scores are all either things that you move towards or move away from in order to not deal with that false belief. So like if I remember right, you had a high 1 score. So for you, doing the right thing, and thinking about fairness is really important, because you learn to use fairness as a barometer to protect yourself from being vulnerable and weak. So it would be translated as this: I, as an 8, will use fairness and rightness and do the right thing as a way so that I can judge others if they don't measure up, so I can protect myself and not be vulnerable and weak to John Doe or Sally Mae. And so you use that one. So when you start saying, oh shit, okay, when I'm using this righteousness or being fair or being anal retentive about what is fairness and doing the right thing, now you can have the awareness to say, okay, let me pause for a moment. Am I doing those things on behalf of avoiding the deeper down sense of that I am vulnerable, I don't want to be vulnerable, and I feel weak? Or do I use those things as a way of, it springs forth from my heart to do the right thing? It's very different as to why I am being or doing, wanting to do the right thing.
Can you have both motivators? Can you both have because am I to think that there is nothing that is righteous? Like, is there what? So if I want to make my son's life better and give him a better life, what would be the healthier, positive motivator to make me do that? Right? Like,
yeah. So I would say is I try to do this as much as I can with my daughter, right? So fundamentally, I'm not going to, again, I'm her protector. I will protect her from physical and psychological harm. I've taken that story on as my own to manage my daughter. Outside of that, when she has a tough conversation with a friend leaves her, or in the past, this happened when she was younger, I would ask her, how do you feel? I would not intervene and tell her what is the right thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
I would ask her those coaching questions and say, well, how do you feel? What does that feel like? Do you want to keep doing this over and over again? Or do you want to, what would boundaries look like for yourself, Sid? How would you determine who is a good friend versus a fake friend? So it's getting them in touch with their own self to figure out, even at 12 years old, 13 years old, what do I want? What is fair for me? Not because my dad said it's fair.
Mm.
You know, so if she's struggling with her grades, I would say, I'm going to tell her, I'm not going to go in and talk to your teacher. At first and foremost, my default is that acceptable by you? Do you want to do that? Do you feel okay with that? Where do you put burden and stress on yourself? Or how are you putting stress on yourself to perform at a certain standard? Who taught you that? So I try to ask my kid a lot of questions as much as I can and give less, this is what you should do or should not do.
And how's your experience with that? Does it always go well? Does it go well sometimes and bad sometimes? Like,
Yeah.
I know a lot of parents. So what you're speaking to, both from with my conditioning of wanting to do a better life, that's also part of what I was trying to talk about with the idea of using the gym as therapy. The guys that are saying alpha male and we're not toxic masculinity, we're this, that, you know, and I kind of ping pong between both because I see both sides in some ways. But to what you're saying is like, no. Like this whole legacy crap, like it needs to be coming from the right place. And in addition to that, when you're bringing up your child, that's your legacy, you've got to ask them questions. These same people pushing that agenda are telling you don't ask your kids questions. You tell them that they need to do. You tell them they wake up. You tell them they're going to do it. You know what I mean? It's a very different environment. So speak a little bit, because I'm halfway there. Mm-hmm. There's things that I make it's difficult, and I know you know this too, when you get divorced and now you're sharing custody and maybe the kid's half there and half there, and it's like they might not have the best habits here and you got to fix it, right? So you're trying to like figure out. So I have a couple of my rules that happen. but it really is centered around electronics, you know, like, however, I do make sure that I ask him a lot of things because he went through a series of bullying, and it was very interesting because he had asked me, and I had just come back into his life after being gone almost 2 years, and he was getting very severely bullied, and he got physically bullied, and he was upset, and he said to me, I was angry. And I'm trying to have this mentality. I was even thinking about coaching and stuff that we had done. I'm like, I'm not going to project. This is not me feeling weak. I got to focus on him. But I was ready to burn buildings, right? Like I was like, that whole protector thing kicked in, that whole vulnerability, sure. Right? I could feel it going. And it is easy to slide into, right? But I'm sorry. What I wanted to get to was, I went through that series of saying like, well, what do you want to do? Because he asked me, what would you do? I said, not what I would do. I'll tell you what, same thing happened to me. It was very eerie. I said, what I would do is what I did is I walked into school the next day at the science fair and punched the kid in the nose and broke his nose. And my son looked at me horrified. He goes, is that what it's like up there? And I'm like, yeah, you know what? That wasn't the best story to tell my 12-year-old. And he's like, I don't think I want to be a fighter, Dad. And I'm like, and it checked me. And then I was very blessed where it checked me. And then I got into the question mark. What do you want to be like? How do you like, how do you feel like, do you want to feel like this? You know, it's really interesting. Right. So speak to the fact, if I can grab you a few minutes, is it always going to be easy? I think it's going to be hard for a lot of parents to start being like, wait a minute, to help my kid better and help me better, I should be asking them more questions versus giving them more discipline.
Yeah, it's a good question. It's a balance. I'm just saying is asking them questions so that spiritually, mentally, and emotionally, they can grow up and be mature faster and learn how to self-regulate, parent themselves, and manage themselves. We're trying to give them those kinds of skills early on in life so that by the time they're a young adult, they have a certain level of neurological wiring that says, I've learned how to self-regulate. and they'll be more mature and they'll handle their shit significantly better. Now, that's not to suggest there isn't a need for a father to intervene to ensure the physical and psychological safety of their kid. Oh, I will in a heartbeat. And she knows that.
Yeah.
So she knows that deep down, if push comes to shove, my dad's, you're gonna have a problem. Now up until that point, I'm giving her all the latitude to figure life out.
Notice I'd love to see you struggled to stop at it. It'll be a problem. there was some.
It would be definitely a problem. And like I said, I want to give her as much latitude to figure out life as much as I can for her, and to minimally, as much as I can, I know that I'm not perfect with it, but not project how I would do it, because then she loses her own personal identity of who she is. And then there becomes a dependency on dad from a mental and emotional standpoint that I don't want. I want her to grow up and be a strong mental, emotional, and physical woman with softness and gentleness in class. It reminds me of a great book earlier. We were talking, it reminded me, I have a tattoo on my ribs, Dan Hellman.
H3, Dan Hellman. Yeah.
No, I'm sorry, not Dan Hellman from H3. Dan Mellman. Mellman. So he's a spiritual writer. He was a UCLA gymnast. He broke his leg and was never able to compete. He wrote the book, The Way of a Peaceful Warrior.
Oh, okay.
And he talks about the physical grind of becoming on the threshold of an Olympic gymnast, and then also developing an inner warrior and nature to himself. So, I think of that concept is, be a gardener who is a warrior, so that when you need to pull out the sword, you can use it, but you want to be a gardener and be at peace with self and in life. And so, I know I'm getting off a little bit, but the core of this is I try to give my daughter as much latitude. And even when I think it's a shitty decision, I do as a father, I say, if she decides this, will it be a fucking wrecking ball that we can't come back from? No. Okay, go for it, Sid. I say, go make that decision. I'm like, she's going to get her ass kicked on that one. Or sometimes I'm like, I don't know what the answer is. So I'm like, what do you want to do? She says, this is what I want to do. I said, all right, we'll go figure it out. Let's see if it works. And we learn together.
And this is what I want to make a point of. So if you're a parent, so let's say you're, whether you're a coach or not. So we talked about the fact that if you're a coach and you're at a lower level, and you're just getting started, you want to understand other people and their motivations and personalities. The first person you need to understand is yourself. So that's why it's great for a coach to start doing, the program with you, right? Like they're going to get more out of who they are as a coach and their motivators working with you on that program, which would then allow them to be more receptive to other people, at least to see the signals or so forth, and be in better touch with themselves. Would we make that same translation that if you're a parent listening to this being like, you know what, that makes a lot of damn sense. And I wish I could be more open with my kid, but I don't know what would you say a great first step for a parent to learn how to parent a little bit better would it be to do the same program?
Correct. Remember when I said before, there's no problem that I can't give some very clear mental, emotional understanding of why you're struggling. So if you're a parent, you're saying, I'm struggling with how to raise my kid. I have had that one before. And I have my own version of that, sure. So the beauty is that does help. That does foster and facilitate a greater sense of awareness of self. I have the blessing that and the fortunate that my daughter took the assessment. So she wanted to.
Really?
I mean, I've shared with her about the Enneagram throughout her whole life. Yeah. So when she was old enough, I let her take the assessment, and she got her results and she read her report. I went through it with her, etc. So just last week we were talking about, I said, Sid, you're this type, and I know you're prone to wanting to do X, Y, and Z, but I'm going to caution you is remember what is a growth opportunity is for you to slow down, anchor into the present moment versus thinking about the next sexy thing that's coming down the road.
And do you mind sharing roughly about how old is she now?
She's 16.
Okay. Oh, so you got like full blown teenager. Oh,
Yeah. So she's 16. So she took it when she was 13, actually.
wow. She's taking this and understanding this at 16, huh?
Yeah.
That's
So
impressive.
we have a lot of conversations around this, and so it gives us a nomenclature to talk and to interface. So it's not just dad's point of view. I can use it as a reference, and say, as your type, these are things that you have strengths with, and here's your limitations. Here's my strengths and your limitations. One of the standing jokes is that her type is my path of growth. So I always joke with her and say, when I watch you and I'm around you, you create an environment that reminds me to spend more time on my path of growth, for example.
Oh, that's awesome.
She smiles and she thinks that's funny shit.
Wait, that's not funny. I thought that was kind of beautiful.
Yeah, it is. It's classic. I chuckle with her and I laugh. I'm like, you're right. I appreciate that. So
I thought it was going to twist into a thing where like she's on my path of growth and that's why she challenges me so much.
Well, she challenges me in different ways, for sure. For sure.
I can only imagine. First of all, I don't know the right words. Like that's absolutely amazing in today's day and age for a girl at 16 to be open to the idea of dad's work, what's dad's passion, take the test, then be self-aware about it, and then have this ongoing communication with you. Like I said, this pathway of communication at 16, where so many parents I run into, and even myself, it's like, okay, how am I going to artfully take them off this phone? How am I going to, it's like, I worry. Since getting my son back, I have episodes of worrying, like, have I made an environment comfortable enough where my son will come to me if he has a problem? If I made an environment, like I try to be conscious, if I made an environment where my son's comfortable to grow, I'm big on the things like Jordan Peterson has talks about, like kids need to be able to how does he phrase it? Like you need to be able to do dangerous things in controlled environments, but you have to make mistakes, but you don't want to make a mistake so bad. Like you said, you can't come back from it. Like if they can come back from it, like I've seen my son do some stupid things sometimes, and I'm just like, she's like, boom. Oh, like, I'm like, why would you do that? I don't know. I just thought it made, I was like, did that make any sense? He's like, no. I was like, you do that again? He's like, oh, no. Right? Like boys might be different than girls from that perspective. Like there's a lot more really dumb physical things. And I'm just like, what are you doing? Yeah. But I got you at an hour and 42, man. I could go forever with you. You're awesome. There were so many other things I wanted to get to. Let me wrap it up by saying, what I didn't even think about that there's a lot of things you gave me to think about, which I appreciate so much because you didn't take my bait, but I took your bait and I got a nice coaching session. And I don't know. And for anybody watching, look how smooth he did that. I just suddenly was, but I really appreciated from all times your idea of the curiosity, always wanting to know more. And that was something that I felt made me different, where people thought I was hard or I was demanding or I did, but I always had a side of me that was super, super curious, which led me to systems and systems. So you've taught me something there. But I thought the other thing that was like, oh, this Enneagram is really just for kind of coaches or people. Like you're a parent and you're struggling with your kid. You're a parent and you're struggling with your kid weights, organizing your time,
Yep. Your relationship with your loved one.
This works for everybody at all stages, right? Like,
I've worked with people who I've recently been divorced, and I don't want to make the same mistakes I made in my first marriage. So Jason, can we connect so that I can learn more about myself? And so I don't look and rinse and repeat, so to speak, so that's why I said, there's so many people come to me for all kinds of things, including of, I can't shed the weight. Well, what's going on? And I tell them, like, this assessment will help us understand, although we normally think of it as, physical health, just, hydration, nutrition, the 6 foundational principles. Yes. And one of them is mental and emotional, right? So we need to assess for how that part is playing out in life. Yeah, and that's why I thought having an assessment for the mental and emotional pieces, like in the check-in suit that we talk about, a health assessment questionnaire, right? An HAQ, it's very detailed and very long about all your organs and glands, et cetera. But formally for me, what I found was a gap was There's no Check Institute psychological or mental and emotional assessment that complements the physiological abilities and assessments that he has. So to me, that's why it's a yin and a yang. It's a nice complement to paint a more total picture.
Yeah, and that was the one thing I would say in the final wrap up was too, is that if you're a coach and you've just gotten a certification like an ISSA or NASM or I forget how NFPT, I forget all of them, you know, those ones that are between, you know, 150 and 350, you know, for $299 to do this type of work with you, not only are you going to personally as a newbie coach, like if you're sitting here as a coach and you're like, wow, this sounds pretty deep, start with you. It's the same price you've spent on your certification. And I will say this, not that I'm making any promises or guarantees on Jason, but from knowing you and the time that I've known you, there's never been a time professionally that I've ever reached out to you with a simple or complex question that you never not responded back. So like if you're a young coach, I couldn't tell you how more invaluable it would be to have a connection with Jason's experience level, get some coaching by him, and then have that as a resource one day to be like, hey, you know, Coach Jason, now I want to get deeper in this, because you do have courses that coaches so that they're certified in doing this, right?
Correct. Yeah, I have a certification for coaches if they want to incorporate the tool into their own practice, for sure.
And what, give the website again?
InnerCompass9.com.
Okay. And where you're at Instagram, same thing, right?
Yeah, same handle. Yeah.
And we're gonna wrap up and close. And I'm sorry because I did want to get to you about the unconscious partners.
Oh yes, my partner and I. Yeah.
Yes. So yeah, explain it real quick and ending, and give that one just so it's on here and so forth.
Yeah. So it is, my handle on Instagram is Unconscious Partners. It is of course the belief that most of our given relationships we're managing our shit in the presence of each other in an unconscious manner. And the idea is to, as Jung said, bring our shadow to the light. And so the idea is just she and I get to play and share our journey little by little, share with others about concepts around fighting fair versus fighting unfair, talking about how do we negotiate, like what are the 5 techniques or the 5 ways to communicate your needs and your wants. So it's just more of she and I in many ways off the cuff. You know, we'll joke around on all kinds of fun stuff and banter. So
yeah, if you're a couple, or if you're looking at a couple of things, Z has a personality, and sure, you have a different. It's an interesting back and forth because it's like excitement and calm, excitement and calm. Your hair is a lot of times the subject of things. This is a beautifully well-groomed Jason for those that might not recognize you when they get to unconscious partners, but yeah. But you get a really nice, if you see, I see a lot of coaches on this that have this present or face up front, like, well, here's how you're going to talk to your kid. Here's how you're going to coach. It's like you get to see it, but behind the scenes of Jason doing these things in action in real life time in his partnership. So if you're interested in the coaching, at least check out the Instagram. If you're interested in having some fun and entertainment, check out the Unconscious Partners. It's entertaining. Yeah. I can't thank you enough, man. Your time is amazing. This was awesome. Oh, give out that book again. What was that book? I always ask people for a book reference when they're here. What's Peaceful Warrior? Is there one book?
Called The Way of a Peaceful Warrior is one book.
The Way.
And then it's heavy reading, but anything by the author, he's a PhD clinical psychologist. His name is Stephen Walensky. And he's written a book on trances. He's written a book called The Dark Side of the Inner Child.
Wow. Okay. It's like I get to learn how to use my inner child to access the dark side of the force.
It's a little different. Sorry?
Did I learn the force choke? What's the dark side?
The dark side of the inner child, it is, at a high level, it is the notion that too many times we placate to the inner child when the inner child just needs to be heard, but not necessary. It's like it's like allowing a terrible, the tantrums, right? The terrible twos. It would be like allowing the 2-year-old to run the house.
Is it kind of like having the like you said before, this fear, anger of, well, I'm going to give into like punching the guy in the face because he's aggravated me because I'm projecting this on, feeling weak, and my inner child would love to just be seen and smack the guy in the face. So I want to smack him, and I don't like. Is that emotion, physical? Maybe I gave away too much right there.
No. I would say is
why do I keep wanting to smack these motherfuckers, Jason?
It is to acknowledge that there is a dark side to inner child work, and that it's not a matter of soothing and placating to a an emotional, struggling child, right? So rather than making sure their space is psychologically and physically safe for them to have a temper tantrum, and you remain like cool, like, are you done yet? Like, if you need to off gas this energy, you can cry till the cows come home, but I'm not giving you a candy bar before dinner. Now you can bitch and moan. So sometimes inner child work is to placate to the demands and be controlled by the demands of the 2-year-old, right? So he's cautioning to say, we need to do inner child work with some balance here. And what does it mean to actually transmute and deal with your shit, and with respect and humility and compassion, while also not being swept away by it. And he's got a lot to say on the topic. But I would say is anything that Stephen Walensky writes, he's got a dozen or so books. The Tao of Chaos, The Way of the Human. It's a 3-volume set. He's got a small book on relationships. Really, those are all his. Yeah. So anything he writes, I'm a fan of.
All right, brother. I'm afraid if I say anything more, we're going to go long. Yeah. I could go forever. I would love to have you back after I cycle through this and get a better handle of doing it, because I'd like to play more with some of these concepts, and I'd like to talk more about, the relationship side of things and so forth. But man, this was a ton of knowledge. I can't wait to get to some of the clips, because there's better than I could expect it, man. Especially on like no notice. So, innercompass9.com is the website. It's the same handle on your Instagram. Unconscious Partners is the handle on Instagram. You can get the personality assessment just to get it and read it yourself for $50, or for the same price you spent for your crappy weekend certification, you can learn more about why you're fucking up than any time before, and do it. Or if you really see the value, contact and reach out to Jason and get some more information about the coaching program to learn how to do.
Sounds good. Thanks, Sean. I appreciate your time, brother. I appreciate the invitation.
Give Z my best.
Will do. All
right.
Bye-bye.
All right. No, Jay. Oh, no.
You order yoga?
Hold on a minute.
All right, I'm gonna hit end record. Yeah, I forgot to tell you we got to do a fake goodbye.
Okay.
So I'm just hoping I'm hoping
Well, it's still